Hey everybody, I'm Vincent Mintz, CEO of Three Nails InfoSec. Today I am joined by a great friend, Nick DeMeo, who recently achieved the amazing accomplishment of becoming the CIO at Vista Clinical Laboratory. Um, Nick is such an interesting character. I'm excited to hear about his philosophy surrounding helping shape cybersecurity through cost-effective measures and hopefully hear about a little bit about his bleeding heart for helping people and companies in need. So, Nick, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself to start?
Yeah, thank you, Vincent. Appreciate it. Yeah, so like you said, I just kind of walked into this role of Chief Information Officer. It's quite the challenge that I'm excited to jump into. And I really think that based on kind of my long, crazy history, that it's led me to this moment, and I'm just really excited. I have a very diverse background. Just to kind of give everybody a glimpse on how my childhood was, I was raised in a very strict Christian home, but at the same time, my dad was old school Italian, and we were raised on Roman total war principles. My dad actually had a sign in his office that said, "The Romans didn't build a great empire by having meetings; they built a great empire by killing all who opposed them." And people would always laugh at that. And
Yeah.
my brother and I were like, it's not a joke. Like, no, that's my
Right.
dad's a strong believer in that. So it's kind
Wow.
of controversial or contradicting, I should say, between the two values being raised on. So that kind of built a lot of intensity. But one thing I would appreciate from my childhood is the amount of work ethic and also the passion that it kind of drove me into when I do make a commitment to something like cybersecurity, for example, specifically in the healthcare industry. That tenacity of that like Roman total war, that like we're all in, we have our sword and shield, we're going to fight for what we believe in. There is no failure, there is no plan B. Like this is what we're doing, full commitment. And I think I really appreciate, in a weird way, and how that's really driven me to get to where I am in my time of life, because it's a lot of work, just like anything, whether it's a marriage, a job. It takes a lot of commitment and work, and when you're raised in that crazy mentality, it almost made it like natural. Um, it to me, it's like, oh, I am who I am. I'm just doing what I normally do. But I do have a diverse background, like I said, being Italian, construction, in the Southeast Michigan area is kind of in our DNA. So it is interesting to see going from an industry like that and switching over to IT and then security, of how a lot of those skills actually translate. And maybe not a technical skill wise, but not having a book or a manual to tell you how to do something. You got to think on the feet and just figure it out using the foundational knowledge you do have. That was all on a construction site, and then you jump into a cybersecurity, like doing an incident response like ransomware, and all of a sudden it's just like muscle memory. You're hitting the basics, and you're like, holy crap, I'm in the middle of this and I'm doing it. And it's really interesting on how things that you wouldn't expect in your early life and how it prepared you for today. It's really fantastic, when you essentially just have a good, strong confidence in yourself, but also, faith, whether it's from a spiritual viewpoint with God, to really just say, man, you've been led here for a reason. You've walked those path lines for a reason, and now you're here, and then now it's time to do, what you what you were meant to do, and it's how I was raised, full commitment. You can't second guess it. You got to be both feet into the pool,
Yeah.
and to me, you know it's kind of like Achilles, from the movie Troy. His fate walked hand in hand with his glory. The more famous he wanted to be, the more closer to death he was going to go. So sometimes that kind of recklessness can kind of lead you down to some mistakes, but fortunately you can recover. Um, so not everything's been perfect. It's been a long, rough road. Just being a reckless kid, making bad decisions, to eventually figuring out how to control uh, you know, the things you've been born with, things you were created to do, and realizing like, oh, you're supposed to be doing something with this, not street racing or using
Mm.
it, for, uh, you know, inappropriate reasons or something. Like, you have some natural gifts. You can really use this to help people and do a lot of good.
Wow.
And that's kind of what's led me to where I am now. And it's kind of really beautiful. And I really look forward to sharing this not only with you and other people, but also my daughters as well.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's different than most intros are. That was really good. And honestly, what really resonated with me is this one of the last statements you made surrounding like using the abilities we were given wisely and ethically, or for me, ethically,
Right.
right? I relate to that because, like, as a penetration tester and ethical hacker, like, I started when I was around 15 or 16 years old hacking, and there was really not a lot of platforms, even just 15 years ago now,
Hmm.
like Hack the Box or Try Hack Me and different labs like that where we could practice. Anyway, all I have to say is it's neat to hear that another person, which is not really that surprising, but it's really neat to just hear that you walked a similar walk and just totally
Right.
different lives. But it's just really powerful to hear that you were able
Yeah.
to come to that conclusion that you wanted to use it to for the betterment of people rather than self-seeking type of thing.
Exactly. No, and that really does hit home with me as well. It's like I've always made the joke, if I knew physical pen testing was a job, 20 years ago, when I was
Yeah.
doing it for free for fun, it's
Yep.
like kind of, like, oh man, I could have been getting paid for this. Like,
Yeah. Nice. That's awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for the background. I think it's going to tie perfectly into my first question, which surrounds your passion for making security affordable and accessible for, I guess, every industry, but you're particularly in the healthcare industry, right? So, and you were in your previous role was also in health industry, correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, what was sort of the sequence of events, or what drove your passion for making security more accessible, and maybe give us a little bit about how you're doing it or how you plan to do it right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it really started with my previous role. I had really the great opportunity to see thousands of healthcare clients and their IT setup, their security setup, and really just it really shocked me, the first initially, just on how behind healthcare was in cybersecurity and just general IT. And really, when it comes to educating myself, reading, FBI reports, and just seeing where all the damage is being done with ransomware, and it's really the healthcare industry is just leading the pack by far numbers when it comes to being victims. And it kind of hits home with everybody. Like, my father's a patient. He has an illness. He goes monthly for. I know other family members. They're in assisted living, assistant cares, and what I'm realizing is when they are a victim, they don't even know they're a victim. If they
Mm.
get their identity stolen and these hackers are billing their insurance companies with fake doctor's licensing and such, they don't even know. Just
Mm-hmm.
one day the social security checks stop showing up, or there are sudden they get like a massive bill, or they're getting, you know, questioned by their insurance company, or they're getting dropped from their insurance, and it really comes down to when it comes to healthcare, it starts getting to the point where it is actually becoming a life or death situation, where now somebody may actually die because they can't get the healthcare they deserve, simply because somebody in a basement saw an opportunity to make $1,500 off of a patient
Mm.
record or something, and
Man.
just exploiting that.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just who I am, is trying to be, not even trying to be a good Christian. Honestly, it just kind of goes hand in hand with my personality. When you see somebody that is essentially like a soft target, come somebody that's essentially defenseless, and you see somebody attacking them, that just immediately kicks in that like anger, and I'm like, that really drives me even farther to go, okay, now we need to build a wall for these people,
Mm.
whether it's paid or not. Like, we have to find a way to protect them because
Mm-hmm.
the wolves are at the gate. And right
Yeah.
now there is no gate.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know, and
Hmm.
we got to set up some barriers here. Otherwise, they're just gonna get completely taken advantage and exploited without any repercussions. Um, so and there's just so much room for growth there, and they're just a decade behind, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it just needs all the help they can get. And I kind of equate it to like a flood. There's a hurricane hits a city, and I hate to say it, you never want to see these tragedies, but one thing that always brings a tear to everybody's eyes is how all the division stops. There is no more, um, you know, nobody's broken into categories anymore. When one of these like hurricanes hits, everybody is just trying to help each other, dragging people out of water, canoeing people, carrying somebody out of a flood, throwing up sandbags. Everybody, it's all hands on deck to help the community, and nothing else outside of that matters. And in reality, right now, that's what healthcare needs. They've been hit with a hurricane,
Mm.
typhoon, and the floods are just spreading, and we need all the hands we can get to really help contain it. And we just need to kind of push everything else aside, trying to profit off of these things and really just say, hey, let's get a handle on this first.
Mm.
And then, we can go back to, the business side of actually profiting, taking them to the next level of their security posture.
Mm.
Uh, and that's really what's really driving me right now is because they do need so much help. And we often regard people who are just not ignorant may not be the word, but like they're just not educated on IT. They went to school to be a doctor or a surgeon. They didn't go to school to learn how to hack or how to program a server. And they don't have the time to learn that. They shouldn't need to. There should be expert professionals that can give them honest advice without having, a sales package behind it. We should generally want to help somebody first, and if we can make some money doing it, awesome. But it shouldn't be, leading somebody down the wrong path simply because you could possibly profit off of them.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring the human value back into security and IT. Um, and that's something we're doing here at my company is we're to help boost our culture is really recognizing, these aren't just numbers on a barcode or a lab test. These are human beings they may find out from this test that, they only got 6 months left. And, we should really take a lot better care and value and really bring the humanization back into everything we're doing, um, into the workforce.
Okay. Do you feel like your more diverse background, like your experience in different positions, different verticals, has helped shape like the strategies you bring to balance like security with practicality and budgeting? Like, I'm just curious if you have like any strategies or anything that you can share to other CIOs or CISOs that have really helped you be able to bring more affordable solutions into environments where budget is a big factor and resourcing, because I run into it all the time. That's a huge challenge for I think the whole industry is
Mhm.
cybersecurity budget, and I think mostly it's people just don't recognize that it's a major priority,
Right.
or they just accept that their insurance will cover it, and that's sad. But yeah, any insight into budgeting?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the diversity is really the key is you can't help somebody or support anybody if you don't know what they're doing. And sometimes it just takes you sitting down next to them and watching them work a daily function and really figure out what their pain point is. And that's something that, like, I've noticed if when you don't do that, you start making changes or implementing things. And from your point of view, like, well, we got to do it for security, but it's like, okay, but now you're kind of crippling this business workflow. Was that was there
Mm.
a better way that we could have done? Could there have been better communication? Should we have been more flexible with the rollout? So the key for me is when you're trying to work into that budget is really spending time with all those different departments and really finding out what their pain points are, what they really need, and also what they're lacking. Maybe there's a process they don't even know about, but you know about, and you say, you know what, this would actually save you a lot of time if we did this. Like, hey, you're having issues. Maybe if we just moved all this to SharePoint, that would save you a lot of lag time trying to access, a file share or something on the network. Simple things like that. One thing I stressed to in one of our meetings, I was like, if I could save 1 minute by writing an automated script, I will write that script, because if I have to do that 5 times a day, that's 5 minutes a day, 25 minutes a
Mm.
week. That's
Mm-hmm.
hours at the end of the month. And
Mm-hmm.
all those little things, even if it's just a couple minutes, they start adding up throughout your day.
Sure.
And that's how I would look at it, kind of going after low hanging fruit instead of tackling like a massive issue, spending a lot of time and resources on it. Maybe there's other little things you could do that don't really cost much, but that will greatly improve the life or the workflow of your fellow employees from different departments, and that kind of boosts morale, and helps you in a way, because now they're more open to do team collaboration and help you with constructive feedback, because like, oh, you just saved me. Oh, I don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, I'll help you. And that's really what it's about, is just building like a really good positive atmosphere and environment. Um, and that's just something I'm really big on. Nobody wants to do anything with you if they don't like you. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a
Mm-hmm.
popularity contest in a way. It's you gotta be somebody who they want to go to and they can trust you.
Mm-hmm. So as far as the budgeting aspect, to me, it sounds like what you're saying is really honing on each individual role or each maybe team's role and making sure they're as efficient as possible. Is there anything surrounding like tooling or assessments or standards or anything that you found that if you adhere to these or if you do these actions or anything like that, if you implement this this framework or something into your company, that it would also maybe affect the ability for you to maybe invest more money, more time into resources like cybersecurity or anything like. I'm just curious if you have any other insight into that specific like budgeting aspect and
Yeah. So one thing I really like to do too is looking at manual tasks and really figuring out how many hours are spent or how many people are spent doing these tasks. And it's like, okay, well, you were quoted, $10,000 for this system, and you were like, oh, that was way too high. But if you actually go back and see how much hours you're spending on doing this manual task, that $10,000 probably looks really good on paper.
totally,
um,
totally,
you know, and so
yes,
um, specifically for cybersecurity is HHS.gov came out with their cybersecurity performance goals. It's really the first time they actually started giving details on how healthcare businesses can actually secure their environment, and it's broken up into essentials and then the advanced goals. And that's really what I'm going to be focusing on implementing, is making sure we have all the essential goals checked off and efficiently, and then move to the advanced goals for like year two. That's our plan, to move to that. What do we have to do? As far as the budget goes, I'm a very big person on value over brand name. um, if I can go get a Chevy car for $26,000 and it does almost everything a Tesla can do, why would I spend twice the amount for the Tesla? If this car's already got the boxes checked.
yep,
I look at features and things like that more than I do name brands. I'm willing to give somebody who's kind of in the middle. They don't have big, huge finance behind them for marketing.
mm-hmm.
But if they can prove that they check off all the boxes we need for the organization, that essentially is what's going to drive pursuing that for a budget. So that is something I'm a big believer in. And I know with security, people tend to be way too tool heavy, and they go out and get quotes for these super expensive. Oh, well, we need CrowdStrike. That's the number one. Like, okay, yeah, CrowdStrike is the number one EDR. You're absolutely right. However, look how much budget of your department is going to be spent just on CrowdStrike. You know,
Sure, mm-hmm.
sure, maybe, if you go with a different option like Microsoft EDR, you're spending way less money. Sure, it's not as good. However, you shouldn't be relying on one tool anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the finances to go get, security operations center, get like and put a seam or something like that. You have more flexibility to add in a diverse amount of tools than just putting all your money on one. And I do see that a lot is especially with like IT providers, they all use Sentinel One, and Sentinel One's a good product. I have nothing against Sentinel One, but it is expensive. And if you go to a doctor's office or a health clinic that has a very tight budget, and pretty much 80% of their budget is just spent now on Sentinel One, how you're not really going to help them increase their posture. You're not going to help out with security awareness training, email security, firewalls, 24-hour monitoring. There's all these things that you have to add to the network stack, and
Yes.
you have to be really careful on when you're selecting a tool to make sure like maybe it's not the greatest and the best, but it checks off enough boxes and it's in a price point that doesn't cripple the rest of the stack. That's something I would recommend is to really evaluate a number that you want to spend. I had the value of working for an IT provider, and I think quantifying it as a per user cost is really the best way to do it, and look at how much something would cost, for each of your employees. So, if you have 500 employees and you divide that total cost, like that's how much you should really be evaluating your budget. Like, you know what? I think a healthy security budget would be $10 a user. And then you go source your vendors so that you're staying within that $10 a user. And I think that to me, I think for any business where you're IT provider or a mom and pop shop, I think that would be the really most simplest consolidated way to really build out your network stack or your security stack is doing it in that cost per user basis.
Nick, I'm going to challenge you to write a blog about this because I think what you just described was exactly the answer I was hunting for. Like, that is practical advice for any executive to go listen to this podcast or even read on your blog, your personal blog, and be able to glean information and wisdom from somebody with industry experience. Yeah, no need to reinvent the wheel. Like, you just gave
Yeah.
a perfect roadmap of how to structure your cybersecurity around a strict budget, and I think that's awesome. So I challenge you to that.
Yeah, it'll be on DeMeoSecurity.com, this week.
Nice. Yes. Good. 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 And yeah, you do share content at your own personal blog as well, and we'll make sure to link that on the podcast episode and whatnot. But yeah, so as far as building trust between your company and clients, do you feel like you have any plan to build trust surrounding just communications? Apologies for any background noise, by the way. Got 4 kiddos running around. Being able to build trust with your clients. One thing that I really try to work closely with chief executive officers and security officers, information officers, is demonstrating that you can build trust with your clients by performing different types of assessments as well. And this isn't so much budget related as much as it is. You kind of spoke to earlier about like did you say it was your dad who is a patient, was right? Is that
Yeah,
how you were? Okay.
correct.
And I think patients, although they're not like, it's not B2B, it's B2C in a way, I guess, when a healthcare client comes in, but there's still a level of trust that should be built and assumed when a client comes to a facility and says, I trust you with my information, I trust you with my healthcare history, and I want to be able to trust you. But with breaches happening all the time, I guess what I'm saying is, do you feel like you can build trust through conducting, for example, penetration testing with your clients or with your customers? Do you feel like that's a good strategy to build trust?
Oh, 100%. And honestly, this is kind of a cybersecurity phrase, trust but verify. When we're building at network access or access to cloud base, it's like, yes, trust but verify. And I support that throughout the whole business. Don't go up there and talk about how great your company is and you're secure, like, cool, let's see some proof. Let's see some assessments you've done, let's see some compliance certifications or frameworks you've gone under and got certified in. I believe that very well, and I would urge clients, if you're going to trust somebody to house your data, you know ask some questions. What are they doing? What kind of due diligence have they done to protect your data? Don't take anything for granted, because the more you dig into these breaches, even with global healthcare companies, you would assume they were, everything was in place, and
Yep.
it's like you find out how hackers got in the system, and it's like, man, that's like they didn't even have the basics in place.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yeah. You just said assume. I'm not sure you've heard the phrase, but you know what assuming does, right?
yeah, exactly.
Everybody
You
knows the phrase. So
Yeah, if you break those letters up, it spells something out.
yeah, I mean, that's so frustrating to me is that aspect. Like there's this big facade. I think for major corporations especially that they're just they're so big because they're secure or they must have it locked down. They must have tied every loose end down,
Mhm.
and that's just the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, even down to like Fortune, 100, Fortune 10, like it's still a massive problem. There's so many security holes, and to me, like assessments just can't be emphasized enough. Third party, not your best friend's friend. Like obviously, we kind of chat a little bit about that too on the side, but being able to bring in a non-biased assessor and things like that, I think is just so crucial too.
Yeah, and that really shows your transparency when you're kind
Mm-hmm.
of like you're opening up and like, yeah, come at me, bro.
Yep.
You're really showing that transparency, and you're also showing that you're willing to undergo constructive criticism of your
Mm-hmm.
of your own environment, and handle the feedback and then remediate those issues, because it's not going to be your friend of a friend or your grandson or somebody who's hacking your network. It's it's going to be a very skilled person
Yes.
overseas
Right.
that could care less if everybody was out of a job tomorrow. and,
Mm.
and you really need to show that tenacity when you're and dedication when you're testing
Come
something,
on.
not just to check off a box, but you know get value out of it. Really be interested in
Mm.
actually getting the value out of these assessments and using them to better your posture or protect your data. um, and you kind of
Yes.
owe that, not to just to yourself, but it's your own employees' data too. Like your
Yep.
employees' data is housed in your network as well, not just the patients.
Mm.
And you really need to show, you should want to show that due diligence. You should want to have that pride and care in guarding that information.
Mm. I couldn't say that better myself, man. Literally, we're so similar as far as that bleeding heart goes because I built this business. I started this business because I was just so frustrated with the traditional pen testing happening year over year and the same things turning up every year. And these are healthcare clinics. These are banks. These are casinos. These are like there's PHI, PII, there's PCI data in these networks. It's like, what is going on? Who is like where? At what point in leadership is this failing? And so, as a company, I've built our service offerings around this idea that look, we want to stand beside you. Like, we don't want to just do a pen test for you. We want to make sure that we are a part of your security journey because I want to ensure that you take the proper steps, that we validate those steps. Because conducting a pen test is good, and so is remediation of those things. But I can't tell you how many times remediation didn't work, and then the next cycle we just like compromise the network the same way, plus other ways. Like, and it's just like get the basics down. Like
Mhm.
you need to cultivate a culture of security, and like you're saying, like I feel like what the challenge is though is you can't teach what you're describing. Like you have these principles, this philosophy that like you need to care, and this is why you should care. It's like there's good in you, Nick, that it's hard to like. It's I don't know if you can teach that, which
Yeah.
is why like you need if you can cultivate a team of people like Nick, like you. Never let them go. Never let them feel dissatisfied in their role because those are the people that are going to save your business from a breach. Sorry, rant over, I guess.
No, these rants are needed. We focus a
Yeah.
lot on the Guy Fawkes masks or the Mr. Robot masks, and at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, like you really want somebody that actually genuinely cares and has a heart for human life, and that's
Mm.
really who you want on your team. And sure,
Yep.
there's going to be a lot of work to train them, and that's the other part is like handing somebody the book and it's RTFM. you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there should be some better dedication, to training and mentoring people on your team.
Yep.
Uh, it, it's just going to make your life easier anyways. But,
Yep.
why constant cycle through employees when you got people that actually care? They just don't know how to provide the care. You,
Mm-hmm.
it just takes a little bit of your time to teach them. Um, and I really hope when we're building out, the next generation of cybersecurity professionals that's starting to take on the forefront is, oh, Python, cool, but do you care? you know, do you realize this
Sure.
is a human being, in that file
Yes.
that you're reading? Do you understand
Mm.
that?
Mm.
Um,
Man.
that's and I try to stop using, the term like users. I
Mm.
try to stop using that term because to me, it kind of like dehumanizes people. I kind of like
Mm.
employees or your staff members. At the end of the day, it's not just a robot on a computer; it's a human being.
It's a great
Um,
point, man. Wow. All foundational philosophical principles, I think, that would benefit the entire industry as a whole. So I'm really thankful that Vista Clinical has you. I think that's such a great win for them. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck, Nick. I think that we're at a perfect, I think, stopping point. Do you have any closing thoughts as far as recommendations for people who want to grow in their cybersecurity career in a similar way you did? You made some big leaps recently, and I think that's awesome. But was there anything that you can share with quickly that say, hey, this is what you can do that might really benefit you in your progression?
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, this is outside of cybersecurity. I kind of see this as a problem just with employees in any industry. Is that you have to understand the business that you work for in order to be a valuable asset. And even if you don't plan on staying at that company forever, learning their business and getting and going through the quirks of the business side of things, even if you make mistakes, when you go to your next role, you're going to be quite fine tuned to address something, way above your level that you thought you could go. And a lot of that's going to come out of the dedication, like I talked to in the beginning, and that's involves education, being up to date. Um, I'm a believer in. You remember those old Rich Dad Poor Dad, the Robert Kiyosaki. One
Yep.
thing that always stuck with me is you become who you hang out with. And I've made it a point to network with people that are going in the same direction to me, or they're already at the destination I want to be at. Um, and I just it's kind of crazy in how it just works. And if I'm hanging out with
Such a good word.
executives and I'm learning how they operate, how they think, how they talk, how they got to that level, and it just kind of naturally becomes part of me, and I start doing that, and then I understand, like, it just makes sense in my head, like, oh, that's how they got to that position. This is the language you need to use. This is the
Mm.
angle you actually need to be looking at. It's great to have your head down and diving into security alerts and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and a business has one goal, that's to expand and make money,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to find a way to help that without compromising, your own principles or your own goals, your own personal goals and security. And that it's not easy to do, but anybody can do it. You just have to have the dedication and spend really the commitment in fine tuning that.
Mm.
So that's something I'd really recommend anybody who really wants to go from, a specialist to an analyst to a manager. You really have to understand the business side of things, and because that's who you're going to be sitting in meetings with. You're not sitting in meetings with cybersecurity analysts. You're sitting in meetings with chief operation officers or somebody in charge of business or legal. They don't speak cybersecurity; they speak business. So you have to understand and learn that language as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was really insightful. Awesome. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to Nick, obviously LinkedIn is that your primary point of connection if anybody has questions or thoughts or wants to find out more about you?
Yeah, please hit me up on LinkedIn. You can also go to demeosecurity.com. You can submit, it goes right to my email. You can submit something to our contact form. Yeah, please connect. I connect with everybody I can on LinkedIn. I'm all about networking. Everybody knows, cybersecurity, we've taken over LinkedIn.
Yes,
You
we
know,
have. Yep.
it's
Awesome.
so which is awesome to see. But networking is key just to get yourself out there and ask questions and just strike up conversations with whoever you can. I once talked to the CISO at NFL, for 10 minutes, and that was an
Wow.
awesome conversation to see how they break down these mobile network stacks and how they secure it. Even
Hmm.
if it's just 10 minutes, you're going to learn something out of that short 10-minute conversation. You just got to go out there and initiate those.
Love that. Thank you again, Nick. If anybody has any question or need for any type of cybersecurity assessment, feel free to reach out to Three Nails. You know where to find us. Thank you again, Nick. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely, Vincent. I appreciated you having me on. Look forward to doing this again, maybe hopefully in the future.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody.